Hi everyone, it's Steve and James from wavestreaming.com.
Hi and welcome to this video. It's the first in a two-part series in which we're talking about internet radio and also more specifically how to monetize your radio station, how to make money using your internet radio station.
So just to give you a little bit of background, we spent the past year compiling and researching exactly how the best internet radio stations make revenue, apart from sort of the traditional sort of FM broadcast model. And we discovered loads of interesting things. In fact, we've come across some really interesting stats and things you might not be aware of about internet radio stations that's really going to change the way you view your own station, the future of your station, and how you relate with your audience. And we decided we really had to share this with you, hence why we've recorded this video for you.
Yeah, so we're going to cut to a quick presentation now in which we're going to be revealing some really juicy information. I think this is going to completely change your perception of how internet radio is and really how it's come along over the past year and where it's headed as well. We've also got a free download below which you're welcome to download and keep, print off, put it on your wall if you like, which contains some really exciting and very pretty stats.
So, welcome to the truth behind internet radio. And I'm Steve from wavestreaming.com. Just want to say a big hello to everybody joining us today to basically share the results of some research that we've been conducting since the end of 2011. And we've put together some pretty interesting information. So we work with tens of thousands of internet radio stations, and it's becoming very clear that there are some big opportunities on the horizon and right now. But there are also some threats coming as well, and I want to discuss those and make you aware of them. So first things first, what I'm about to share with you can and should change the way that you run your radio station for the rest of 2013. Now I know that might sound like, a big bold statement to make, but hopefully by the end of this presentation you'll agree with me and you'll understand why I said that. So some sobering facts for you. Over 82% of stations make no money whatsoever, and they have audiences that the traditional FM industry wouldn't even bother advertising with, okay? They were classed as too small to matter. Now, just over 5% of all internet radio stations actually control the vast majority of listeners. I know that's hard to believe, but that's actually the state that we're in at the moment. So, unlike FM, these aren't just corporate stations, okay? This is what's really good and exciting. They're local stations, independent stations, but these are all stations that are ahead of their game and have taken advantage of what I'm about to tell you. You see, we're now at the 50% mark, okay? And this is a huge milestone. And I know what you're thinking, Steve, what are you on about? 50% of what? Well, let me break it down for you. 84% of US consumers listen to AM and FM radio. That's a little down on last year, but that's not what I want to focus on. You see, 43% of US consumers listen to internet radio. That means over half of people who listen to radio are listening to internet radio. So we've actually broken through and we've actually become basically, a majority source of radio information. Sure, we're not as big as FM yet, but, we're really growing incredibly fast. And we've broken that critical 50% barrier. People just can't say that, we're that weird hobby anymore. We're not that sort of thing that hardly anybody's heard of. People on the internet and in the real world are very aware of us. And there are many stations out there on the internet with fanatical listener bases who are incredibly passionate. And there are many stations out there actually making a lot of cash. So hopefully at this point, you're starting to think, well, what's the potential for my station? Well, consider this, how are people listening at the moment? How are people consuming internet radio? Because this is really important for figuring out where we go and what we need to make the most of or change. You see, in 2011, computers and laptops, 97% of listeners were using them to listen in. Basic mobile phones, 54% of people who were listening were using a basic mobile phone. Smartphones, 51% of people who were listening in at some point were listening in on smartphones. And tablets, just 15%. Now, this isn't sort of a breakdown of a single sort of listening session. Okay, many people own multiple devices, and that's why the figures will add up to way more than 100%. Because the fact is, if somebody's into internet radio, they're going to listen on the move, at their desk, at home. So how's it changed for 2012? Well, computer and laptops down slightly to 95%. Basic mobile phone usage down to 42%. Basic mobile phones are going away. Smartphones are what are taking off now at 62%. Okay, that's a sort of a pretty big increase there of 9%. But tablets at 28%, that's a 13% increase. There's been massive growth in the tablet market, particularly iOS tablets. So with that said, how long do people listen for? Well, 80% are listening for 1 to 3 hours per day. Okay, so that's 80% are listening for over 1 hour and up to 3 hours per day. That's pretty impressive. And 40% are listening for 1 to 2 hours continually. Okay, that's absolutely immense. So this could be a 1 to 2 hour program or DJ set or, religious discussion, political discussion, whatever. This shows just how fanatical and loyal our audiences are versus FM and AM. And I'm going to be explaining exactly why that is a little later on. So what does all this mean? How's it going to affect us? Why should it be changing the way that you run your radio station? Well, we're about to hit what I think is a second internet radio boom. The first one brought people on board who were willing to experiment a little technically. They were really passionate about starting their own radio station. What we didn't get on board is we didn't get a lot of corporates, we didn't get a lot of AM and FM stations, sort of in a regional sense, also moving across. So we're really going to get the Johnny-come-latelys. We're going to get the corporates. And like I said, we're going to get those private FM and AM stations who are just not wanting to get left behind. So, how do you actually take this forward? Well, in the next year, I feel, Wave Streaming feel, that internet radio is going to become more corporate, more competitive, and more mainstream. In other words, it's becoming more professional. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get squeezed out. In fact, it means just the opposite. It kind of means that there's going to be a lot more opportunity because this industry is too big just for any one group to dominate. You see, 22% of listeners in 2012 have a household income of over $100,000 plus. You might be thinking, well, how does that affect me? Well, that's basically up a third on 2011. And what this means is the people who like to spend money on their hobbies, the people who've got disposable income, are moving in droves to internet radio. Okay? 2013, this is only going to accelerate. This is massive growth. So what does that mean? Well, it means both opportunity and danger, because it means other people will be trying to get a piece of the pie as well. So basically the FM industry in terms of advertising, $3.8 billion apparently. And there's both good and bad about that. But I think a lot of the reason that FM doesn't have the loyalty that we do, and AM, is that they don't understand their audiences. They sure don't understand the internet, and they blast them with advertisements and messages which are completely inappropriate and drive them away. So for them, I don't believe they want internet radio to develop. I mean, I'm sure you've had this feeling too, until they are ready to move in. And they've been taking their time, just like they did with CDs, just like they did with film. And you know what? They usually seem to mess it up, don't they? I mean, music's a big example of where things went wrong for the industry. So, quick fact, 67% of internet users in total listen to internet radio. We've got massive awareness in the internet community. None of these people are going to be happy with the old radio jingle approach, are they? I mean, they're used to advertising that actually suits their interests, where they've been on the web, things like that. They're used to very specific targeted advertising. And that still doesn't mean they actually like being advertised to at all. But they're certainly not going to take untargeted adverts that FM has been putting out for decades upon decades. Now, you see, our listeners are more loyal. They're coming to us because we're offering them something very, very specific. And I can promise you that they like what you do. That's why you've got listeners. And did you know that 37% of them are actively recommending stations like yours to friends over things like Facebook and Twitter and email and text message? So that's incredibly important. Our listeners change station far less. They're much more likely to stay loyal because they like the content we deliver a lot more. So right now, I just want to discuss a few different concepts with you. The first is of listener value. And this is essentially a dollar value. And it's how much revenue, on average, a listener brings to your station each month. Now, this may be averaged out at $1. Some people may never spend anything with you. Some people may spend more. Now, the vast majority of you will not be monetizing your stations at all. So for right now, this is a theoretical listener value, or hypothetical, but it still actually exists for you. Some people will have a higher listener value or a lower listener value. But what I can tell you is the value of your listeners to your station, in whatever way you want to define it, increases with trust and empathy. So the more you can connect with them and the more they understand what you're doing, the more each listener is worth. And the more you're delivering to them. Now, there's also another concept I'd like to discuss with you, and that's listener goodwill. And, this is basically describing how people feel about your station. And you can get more goodwill by putting out better content and reducing untargeted commercialism, exactly the sort of thing that the FM industry is actually wanting to bring to internet radio. As you can see, we're pretty passionate about avoiding this scenario. But, like I say, there is an awful lot of growth. So, what is this internet radio gold rush? In many ways, it's the second sort of big boom of internet radio. But this is one which is really going to include monetization, and you're there right at the start of it. So how can you increase the bond with your audience? How can you increase your listener value? How can you increase your listener goodwill? Well, basically, you need to have a plan, don't you? You need to be ready. And you need to know how to take advantage of these opportunities in terms of the extra listeners that are coming on board, the extra opportunities for somebody to tune in on a different device, and monetization options. Well, here's the obvious thing, okay? You need to get started today. Here's how you can do that. Firstly, use something called Google Forms. You can find this in Google Drive. So if you have a Gmail account, you'll find on the top bar that you have access to Google Drive. This used to be known as Google Docs. Now, using Google Forms, you can create a questionnaire. And what you want to do is you want to ask your listeners what they like about your show best. What's their least favourite thing? What would they change? And also ask them how they're listening and when they're listening. And this should really give you an idea, and it's always eye-opening this, on where you should be focusing, on what people are really enjoying from your station, and what maybe they're not getting, or what maybe you could tweak. And this is always a surprise for radio station owners, because they end up getting answers back every single time that they just would never have thought about. Next, you want to create a mailing list where people can opt in. And essentially, you can add this opt-in form where people can sign up for your mailing list on your website. And you can also refer to it on your radio station. Now, if you want to create a free one, you can go to MailChimp.com, and they allow you to have small lists for free. And this is going to allow you to communicate what's basically coming up on your radio station. It's also going to allow you to communicate with people about special events. Next thing to do is to create a Facebook fan page. This is something that will grow slowly at first, but it's best to start now, because after you hit a certain point, it kind of hits this tipping point and your growth will accelerate. Creating a Facebook fan page is really going to allow you to connect with your fans in a very immediate way, far more than just a web page or blog would. The next thing to do is when people sign up to your mailing list is to offer extra content. This helps you bond with them more and increases your goodwill value. So what sort of extra content could you offer? Well, you could offer a best of compilation from some of your radio shows of the past. You could include some content that maybe wasn't ever aired, or maybe you could run an interview with one of your previous guests or main presenters, or maybe you could just talk about how you found setting up your radio station, talk a little bit about what it all means to you. If you could just do these basically 4 things, they're going to make such a huge difference over the next week, the next month, and the next year. You're not going to believe it, but you really do need to start now if you're going to take advantage of this internet radio gold rush. And yes, I know that's a little bit of a cheesy way of putting it, but it's basically what it is. So remember, to your audience, you are an insider. You are somebody that they look up to. You are an expert, okay? I guarantee you that there is an area where you know more about your topic than almost everybody listening. So to the vast majority of your audience, you are an expert, and you need to start acting like that. And ultimately, because they look up to you and see you as an insider and an expert, that automatically means you're an authority figure. And being an authority figure means that you've got great responsibilities and opportunities. You've got a responsibility to treat your audience right and to help them get more of what they want. And you've also got an opportunity to grow your listener base and get these people actually bringing in new listeners and also helping you generate ethical revenue. So, to kind of recap and end, there's a huge opportunity coming. And it's going to bring massive visitors and massive revenue, and not just the corporate stations. Now, ultimately, I believe the independent radio stations will win out, just because of the nature of the internet. But whether that takes a year, 2 years, or 5 years, or even 10 years, is up to how we respond now. So in our next video, we're going to be showing you why generating revenue for your station in the traditional FM manner is angering your listener base, driving away fans, and ruining your reputation. And this will be on Wednesday, April the 3rd. And we'll also be showing you exactly how to combat this and generate ethical revenue and raving fans who actually thank you for what you're doing.
Well, okay, so there was some really interesting information there, and certainly some very disruptive figures and statistics about where internet radio is going over the next year, and also where it's come from. You know, things are really moving fast now, and it's becoming a lot more interesting than it was, say, 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh, definitely. There's no doubt about it. Internet radio is becoming mainstream. And we've really enjoyed, our time here today and sharing the stats with you. And don't forget to download the mind map below. Now, we don't want to end this. We've actually got even more to share with you. Next time, we've got what we call the NDA case study, which looks at a radio station run by just one guy generating just over $120,000 per year. Now, we're just preparing that video at the moment, and it's going to be ready for you to view on Wednesday the 3rd. So mark that date down. We'd love your comments below. Like I say, we'll see you in the next video on Wednesday.
Thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.
Thanks, and talk to you later.